Okay, good afternoon. I'm Anni Hesselink. I'm from the University of South Africa, Department Criminology and Security Science. I'm a criminologist actively working in prison besides the academia. Currently in Gauteng, one of our 9 provinces, Johannesburg and Pretoria, where I currently focus on female offenders. And this research is research conducted by myself and my co-author, Hilda Steele, 2009. We have 8 female correctional centres in South Africa, and on 28 February 2011, we had 26,006 female offenders in our female correctional centres. Our female population of the total offender population amounts to about 5% in South Africa. Regarding the babies and toddlers behind bars with their mothers, incarcerated with their mothers, in Johannesburg and Pretoria we had 42 at the time when I left for this conference. Our crime category, the breakdown, the majority are economical, but just on the heels of the economic crimes are the violent and aggressive. 2 years ago, violent and aggressive crimes amounted for the majority of female offenders, which in South Africa was quite scary. 2 years ago, our youth, our males and our females, violent and aggressive crimes were the number 1. So we're making progress, although I think with a few hundred, just over 100, there's just over 100 difference between the violent and aggressive and the economical crimes in South Africa. Good to know still, very few for sexual related crimes, but they are there. First research done in South Africa regarding incarcerated babies was done by one of my colleagues, Kuman and Basson, in 2006. And prior to their research in 2006, babies and toddlers were allowed to stay with their mothers in prison up to the age of 5 years, which from a psychological and a developmental point of view, you can imagine that's a very long period. Since their research, they have reduced it to 2 years. And the debate still remains, is it a good thing to have the babies in our South African prisons with our unique conditions and cultures, to have them with the mothers in prison? 2010, my colleague and I, we were the first to conduct regarding the reasons and the everyday reality of what do they endure in prison, the mothers and the babies, and how do they function. It's a qualitative research, and the aim was from a criminological perspective to explore and describe how they function in prison and their plight of incarceration and what is the impact of incarceration. Focused on Gauteng, one of the 9 provinces as I mentioned, Pretoria and Johannesburg female correctional centres. At the time, both centres were severely overcrowded. Johannesburg female centre was 190% overcrowded at the time. Pretoria was about 60% overcrowded. We adhere to all the research ethics, confidentiality. They all participated voluntarily. We used semi-structured questionnaires, and we had one-on-one interviews with open-ended questions, which allowed us to probe a lot. We had to make use of an interpreter at the Johannesburg Female Correctional Centre because you will see later on that most of the mothers are illiterate. The majority of them only have a primary school education. And in South Africa we have 11 official languages. And I can only speak English and Afrikaans, which is my native language, and then we have Zulu and Khoza, and not all of them can speak English. So the moment if they can't speak English or Afrikaans, then we have to use the interpreter. But luckily my colleague, she could speak about 9 of the 11 languages, but still, those other 2 languages she couldn't speak, so we had to make use of an interpreter there. And I've quoted verbatim responses of the participants to illustrate the everyday reality in prison for you. There was 8 awaiting trial. The AWT is awaiting trial mothers, 5 from Pretoria, 3 from Johannesburg, and 6 of them were sentenced. So in total I had 14 participants. The ethnicity, as I said, look at our rich culture in South Africa: Zulu, Khoza, Tswana, Ndebele, Tonga, Sotho, Zimbabwe. Marital status, 4 of the mothers married, the rest were single. Scholastic qualification, only 2 obtained secondary qualifications, and the rest of them were basically illiterate. They could hardly write. And the 2 were the lowest. I think it was like a grade 3 we had to use interpreters with them, of course, because they were the most difficult to interpret to, besides the language barrier too. They were the most difficult to communicate with. Just the differences between Pretoria and Johannesburg. Now, Pretoria and Johannesburg, I don't know how many of you have been in South Africa, is about 53 kilometers apart. So it's close proximity, but there are vast differences in the two female correctional centers and how they treat the females, the facilities available, and the impact on the children. In Pretoria, all the pregnant mothers and the mothers with babies were housed in one large single cell, and they had single beds, smaller, I mean obviously prison beds, smaller than your normal single bed. And some of the mothers had to share those beds with their babies. And at the time of the interviews, 2 of the babies fell from the beds when the mother turned around. And there were only a few cots available, so some of the babies had to share the cots too. And for all those females in Pretoria, there was 1 shower, 1 bath, and 1 toilet. No hot water whatsoever. In Johannesburg, there were single cells allocated for the mothers with babies, so they had adequate space in prison terms, each with their own toilet and their own basin in their cell. And regarding their cells, there weren't overcrowding because it was a special section allocated for the mothers and babies, but the rest of the prison severely overcrowded. Regarding their diets, in Pretoria they only got a fruit once a week, and that was only bananas, no other type of fruit were allocated, and this is inclusive of the babies. And they got a juice every day. Johannesburg, a variety of fruits, and on Fridays they had like a fun day for the babies where they baked cookies and special treats for the children. Johannesburg, it was more developed regarding the creche for the children. There was a TV and a DVD and videos and educational toys and everything available, and an open courtyard and a greenhouse and a fully equipped kitchen and a creche and everything inside of the unit with a little space of grass. Where in Pretoria everything was inside the prison. The children never got to go outside, so they never even felt grass. In Pretoria, a lot of complaints about hot water. You can imagine with babies and with toddlers, if you don't have hot water and there's no kettle to boil hot water for the babies, and some of them are on formulas, it's a big problem. They also indicated that in South Africa, the babies and toddlers are not the responsibility of the Department of Correctional Services. They are the responsibility of social welfare. So what do? We request donations for formulas, for nappies, for clothes, and then the clothes come in and the mothers fight because she wants the blue jersey and that one got a thicker jersey, and so it's a big problem. The department does not have a budget allocated for the babies and the toddlers, so it's all donations. And that in itself creates a lot of problems in the adequate care and development for these children. The crime analysis of the mothers, 9 of them predominantly in for theft, most of them shoplifting. 1 for car theft, 3 for fraud, 1 child neglect, and 1 murder. Sentences, it's not long sentences, range from 6 months to 3 years imprisonment. 6 of them had previous criminal records, shoplifting, again the predominantly crime, to malicious damage of property. Then the then head of the female prison, he was a male, he said, interesting, around October, November, he finds in the Pretoria Female Correctional Centre that there is an increase of pregnant mothers being incarcerated. What they do, due to unemployment and poverty, they commit petty crimes such as shoplifting. And then they get sentenced because then they know that's a secure environment for them to have a baby with free medical access, good nutrition, a bed, and so forth. And this is, unfortunately to say, this is very common in Gauteng. I cannot speak of the other provinces where the female correctional centres are, but the head of the Johannesburg Female Correctional Centre concurred with this. And it's very sad that due to poverty, that you rather go into prison for good medical treatment and so forth than what you can do outside. Regarding the circumstances of the crimes committed, the one mother said, I stole 3 pairs of shoes because when I left Zimbabwe, my girls did not have shoes. Other one said, I worked for 3 months at a plot and they didn't pay me, so we stole the appliances and we wanted to give it back once they paid me, but they didn't pay, so they kept the appliances and they were arrested for theft. The one who committed child neglect said she didn't know it was a crime. The other one said, I had to provide for my lads. I'm suffering so far. And this one woman said, which was quite interesting, she said because she was on her own, she didn't have a man with her or a partner, she committed crime because the husband or the partner wasn't there to control her. So that's why she committed the crime. Another one said it was due to poverty. I sold the clothes to make a decent living during my pregnancy, so it's shoplifting. They steal clothes and they resell it. Other one who was awaiting trial said she is just not guilty. Other one said she stole 2 t-shirts, clothes. So if you look at the crimes that they committed, it's petty crimes, it's for survival. It's out of desperation and poverty and unemployment. The last one, which is the Zimbabwean, said I had no job and no passport and I ended up doing crime. South Africa, our borders are open to the other African countries, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, Lesotho, so they come in and out, and with the hope of finding employment in Johannesburg and Pretoria, which are the main cities. And there are already scarce resources, employment abilities, overcrowding in the cities. And of course, they end up committing crime. And prison, at the end of the day, for them is the most stable environment where they can be, where there's food and accommodation. Another one said, I wanted to help my husband. I could see that he was struggling to support the family and his income was not enough. He was not coping, and so I stole clothes for the kids to help him. Regarding the opinions of guilt, do they feel they're guilty or not? Only one said she's not guilty, the other one just refused to comment, which, I mean, most probably means she didn't think she was guilty. Regarding the baby and the toddler details, 6 of the pregnant mothers, they were still pregnant, were from Pretoria. In Pretoria, then there were 3 girls, one was 14 days old, the baby and the mother was HIV positive, and one girl was 8 months and the other one 9 months, and one boy who was 4 months old. In Johannesburg, 1 girl and 3 boys. I asked, do you have contact with the biological father, you and the child? 7 said they do have, but not regular, and then contact with family and extended family, and 5 said they do have, but also not regular. Regarding family criminality, which links to yours, two of the participants indicated that their parents were incarcerated, both for 54. Just regarding that point, there's a serial killer in South Africa who claims that, and I could never verify it, and he reckons, you know, when you speak to him, that one of the reasons why he's incarcerated is because his mother was pregnant with him in prison, and he was born in prison. And according to him, it had such a profound effect on his functioning and his self-esteem and his identity. And he tells you straightforward, I'm here because what do you expect? My mother was in prison, I was born in prison. But I could never verify it because our records do not date, it doesn't date back that far in South Africa.